In a small town where life moved slowly, there was an old car repair shop at the end of the main road. The sign outside was faded, but everyone in town knew the name, Harris Auto Repairs. Inside worked Tom Harris, a kind and skilled mechanic who could fix almost any engine that came his way. He was not rich, but he was honest and hardworking, and people trusted him. Tom had a daughter named Lena. She was 19, full of curiosity and light. While most girls her age talked about fashion and parties, Lena loved engines. From the time she was a little girl, she followed her father to the workshop, watching how he handled tools and listened to the soft rhythm of machines. She could tell when an engine was sick just by the way it coughed or trembled. Tom used to smile and tell his friends, "She's got the same ears I have for engines." Life was simple and peaceful until one winter, Tom fell seriously ill. His hands that once fixed cars started shaking. The doctor told him to rest and avoid stress, which meant he couldn't work for some time. The workshop, already small, began to struggle without his full strength. Bills started to pile up, and Lena worried about losing the only place that meant something to them. That was when Mr. Dalton came into their lives. He was a wealthy businessman who had recently bought several garages across the city. He had big dreams and wanted to modernize everything. He offered to take over Tom's workshop and promised to keep him on as a senior mechanic. Tom agreed, thinking it would secure a better future for Lena. But soon, things changed. Mr. Dalton was proud and loud. He didn't like taking advice from people he thought were below him. He looked down on small-town workers, and when he saw Lena helping in the workshop, he laughed. "A mechanic's daughter fixing cars? That's cute," he said once with a smirk. "But engines are for men, sweetheart. You'll hurt your hands." Lena stayed silent. She didn't argue. She knew her worth, even if he didn't. Every evening, after the workers left, she would stay behind to clean tools and study engine manuals her father had kept. She learned how to read wiring diagrams, how to detect engine pressure problems, and how to use diagnostic tools. The smell of grease and oil was like perfume to her. It reminded her of her father's strength. Then one day, something unusual happened. A truck pulled into the shop carrying a bright red sports car, the most expensive car the town had ever seen. It belonged to one of Mr. Dalton's city clients, and its engine had completely failed. The client gave him 2 days to fix it, or he would take his business elsewhere. Dalton wanted to impress this client, so he gathered his best mechanics. For hours, the men worked under the hood. They tested the fuel line, checked the spark plugs, replaced parts, and even reprogrammed the engine computer. But nothing worked. The car wouldn't start. The longer they worked, the more Dalton grew frustrated. He shouted orders, banged his hand on the car, and finally gave up in anger. When Lena walked in with her lunch for her father, she saw everyone standing around the car, confused. She asked softly, "What's wrong with it?" The workers chuckled. One of them joked, "It's too complicated for you, kid." Another laughed, "Yeah, this isn't one of those old engines your dad used to fix." Mr. Dalton heard the laughter and smirked. "Tell you what," he said loudly so everyone could hear. "Why don't we let the little mechanic's daughter have a go? Maybe she can perform a miracle." The shop filled with laughter again. Lena didn't get angry. She walked up quietly, placed her hand on the hood, and listened to the faint ticking sound coming from inside. She noticed a small pattern of failure, something no one else seemed to catch. After a long pause, she asked politely, "Can I have a wrench and a diagnostic scanner, please?" The men looked at each other, unsure if she was serious. One of them handed her the tools, still half smiling. She opened a small panel under the dashboard, checked the sensors, and looked closely at the engine's airflow valve. Her eyes focused deeply, as if she was listening to the car whisper to her. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Everyone watched in silence now. Lena cleaned a thin metal valve that had carbon buildup, tightened a loose connector, and recalibrated the fuel pressure regulator through the diagnostic tool. When she was done, she turned the key gently. For a second, nothing happened. Then, with a deep rumble, the engine came alive strong, clean, and smooth. The sports car purred like a big cat stretching after sleep. The men froze. Mr. Dalton's mouth fell open. Not one of his top mechanics had been able to do that, and the young girl had done it in less than half an hour. The workshop that had been full of laughter moments ago was now completely silent. Lena stepped out from behind the hood, wiped her hands with a rag, and said softly, "Sometimes the smallest things matter most." Mr. Dalton stared at her, trying to find words. How did you do that?" he finally asked. She smiled gently. The sensor was sending false data because of a tiny buildup in the air valve. The engine wasn't getting the right balance. "My dad taught me to listen to the sounds machines make when they're trying to tell you something." The men exchanged looks of disbelief. One of them whispered, "She really fixed it." Another said quietly, "That's Tom's daughter, all right." Mr. Dalton's pride was cracked that day. He cleared his throat and muttered, "Good job," though it was clear it hurt him to admit it. Lena didn't need his approval. She wasn't looking for praise. She simply wanted to help her father and prove that knowledge has no gender. No limit. When Tom came to the shop later that day, he found his daughter surrounded by amazed workers and a perfectly running sports car. They told him everything, and his eyes filled with quiet pride. He looked at Lena and said, "Your mother would be proud. You fixed what no one else could." Lena smiled shyly. "I just did what you always taught me. Dad, listen, think, and try again." That evening, when the last car left and the tools were put away, the sound of the sports car's smooth engine still echoed in everyone's mind. Even Mr. Dalton couldn't forget it. He had mocked her, laughed at her, and tried to belittle her, but she had proved him wrong without a single harsh word. As the sun went down, Lena helped her father close the shop doors. Her hands were dirty, her hair a little messy, but her heart was light. For the first time, she felt like she had truly earned her place beside her father's workbench, not as the mechanic's daughter, but as a mechanic herself. And while the town slept, stories began to spread quietly from one customer to another. They said a young girl had fixed a car that no one else could. They said she worked with her ears and her heart, not just her hands. They said she had changed the way people looked at women in workshops forever. That night, Lena sat beside her father's bed and told him, "Maybe tomorrow we'll have more customers." Tom smiled weakly and said, "If they come, it'll be because of you." She shook her head and replied, "It'll be because of what you taught me." Outside, the cold wind moved through the quiet town, and the lights of Harris Auto Repairs glowed softly in the dark. No one could have known that the moment when a boss laughed would become the start of a story people would remember for years, a story about skill, patience, and quiet strength that needed no words to prove itself. After that day, everything in the small town began to change. The story about how the mechanic's daughter fixed the impossible engine spread like wildfire. It reached nearby towns, car owners, and even other workshops. People started calling her the girl who listens to engines. Some didn't believe the story at first, but when they visited the shop and met Lena, they saw the truth in her calm eyes and confident smile. The next morning, when Lena opened the workshop with her father, 3 cars were already waiting outside. One was an old pickup, another a taxi, and the third a small family car. The owners all said the same thing. They had heard about the young girl who could fix engines that others couldn't. Lena felt shy but happy. She didn't think of herself as special. She just wanted to help people like her father always had. Tom sat on a chair by the door, watching proudly as his daughter worked. She moved from car to car, checking small details, cleaning parts, and explaining everything with patience. Customers loved her honesty. If something could be fixed easily, she never charged extra. People began to trust her, and within a week, the small workshop that once stood empty was full again. Even the town mayor brought his car in, joking that if Lena couldn't fix it, no one could. When she finished, he laughed and said, "You've got magic in those hands, young lady." But Lena only smiled and said, "It's not magic. It's just love for the work." Meanwhile, Mr. Dalton was having a difficult time at his big city garage. Some of his top clients had heard about the girl who fixed the impossible engine and started taking their cars to her instead. His workers whispered about it too. They respected Lena now, even if he didn't want to admit it. Dalton's pride wouldn't let him forget how he had laughed at her, and how she had proved him wrong in front of everyone. One afternoon, he drove to the small town again. When he entered Harris Auto Repairs, he found the place busier than ever. Tools clinked, engines hummed, and the sound of hard work filled the air. Tom was sitting by the counter, while Lena wiped her hands after finishing a repair. She looked up and saw Dalton standing there in his clean suit, holding his hat in his hands. The room grew quiet. The workers stopped what they were doing. No one knew what Dalton wanted. He looked around and said slowly, "You've been busy, I see." Lena nodded politely. "Yes, sir. We've had a lot of customers lately." Dalton cleared his throat. "I came to talk about something important," he said. "I was wrong about you, Lena. I didn't believe someone like you could do what you did. But you proved me wrong. And that's not easy to do." Tom smiled quietly, sensing something in Dalton's tone. Dalton continued, "I'd like to offer you a job. Come work at my main garage in the city. I'll pay you double what anyone earns here. You'll have the best tools, the latest cars, and a big team under you." Everyone in the workshop looked at Lena, expecting her to say yes. It sounded like a dream offer. A big city job, good salary, and recognition. But Lena stayed silent for a long moment. Then she looked at her father, who was watching her with soft, proud eyes. She turned back to Dalton and said calmly, "I'm grateful for the offer, sir. But I can't leave. This workshop is my home. My father built it from nothing, and I want to keep it alive. I don't want to fix engines for fame or money. I just want to help people who trust us." Dalton blinked, surprised. No one had ever turned down his offers before. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You could go far." Lena smiled. "Maybe, but I'd rather stay where I belong. Respect means more to me than success." There was silence again. Dalton looked down at the floor, then nodded slowly. He realized that for the first time in years, he was standing before someone who cared more about purpose than profit. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small black box. Inside was a brand new silver toolkit, engraved with the name Lena Harris. He handed it to her and said softly, "This is for you. A gift from someone who finally learned that real talent doesn't care about age or gender." Lena was speechless. She didn't expect this gesture. She bowed her head slightly and said, "Thank you, sir." Dalton smiled faintly. "You've earned it. Keep making us proud." He put on his hat, turned around, and left quietly. For the first time, he didn't seem like a proud businessman. He seemed like a man who had learned something important about humility and respect. After he left, Tom called out, "Lena." She turned to him, and he smiled with tears in his eyes. "You didn't just fix an engine," he said softly. "You fixed people's thinking. You made them see that hard work and heart matter more than anything else." From that day, Tom decided to change the sign outside the workshop. The next morning, when Lena came to open the door, she froze. The old wooden sign that once said Harris Auto Repairs was replaced with a new one that read Harris and Daughter Mechanics. Her hands trembled as she touched the new letters. She looked at her father, who was leaning on his cane near the door, smiling proudly. Do you like it? He asked. She hugged him tightly. It's perfect, Dad. Business kept growing. People came from miles away to have their cars fixed by Lena. She taught young boys and girls who wanted to learn, never charging them. She believed knowledge should be shared. She would often tell them, an engine doesn't care who fixes it. It just needs someone who listens. Years passed. Tom's health improved, and he watched his daughter become stronger and more skilled. Soon, she earned a certificate in automotive engineering, becoming one of the youngest certified mechanics in the region. Magazines and newspapers wrote about her, calling her the town's wonder mechanic. But Lena never forgot where she came from. She still worked in the same small shop, wore the same old gloves, and treated every customer with the same respect. Sometimes, Mr. Dalton would visit quietly, not as a boss, but as a friend. He would bring new tools or engine manuals and ask for her advice on new technology. The two of them shared mutual respect now. One day, when a young girl visited the shop with her mother, she asked shyly, "Can girls really fix cars like boys?" Lena smiled and bent down to the girl's level. "Of course," she said gently. "You can fix anything if you learn to listen and never give up." That little girl's eyes lit up. She walked around the workshop, touching the shiny tools and looking at the engines with wonder. Lena watched her and thought about the day years ago when she had been that same curious child, watching her father work dot as the sun set. The sound of engines faded into the soft evening air. Tom sat on his chair, closing the shop door for the night. He looked at his daughter and said, "I always wanted this place to live on. Now I know it will, even after I'm gone." Lena placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "It will, Dad, because it's not just a shop anymore, it's a story." And indeed, it became one. People still tell it about a mechanic's daughter who turned laughter into respect, who proved that real skill has no boundaries, and who showed that kindness, patience, and knowledge can change even the proudest hearts. Every time a car left her workshop, running smooth and steady, it carried a piece of that story with it. And somewhere in the town's quiet evenings, when engines purred softly under the fading light, the spirit of Harris and Daughter Mechanics lived on strong, humble, and true.